I never thought I'd see my husband's wedding ring on another woman's nightstand. That tiny gold band, the one I slipped onto his finger 8 years ago, was lying next to a glass of red wine and a lipstick I didn't recognize. And the worst part? The lipstick belonged to my best friend, Chloe. I stood frozen in the doorway of that hotel room, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it over the sound of my own breath. But to understand how I got there, standing in front of the most gut-wrenching truth of my life, I need to go back a few months to when the cracks first started to show. When we first got married, Mark was everything I ever dreamed of: funny, patient, kind. We built a life that looked perfect from the outside: a cozy house in the suburbs, two golden retrievers, Sunday brunches, and date nights that felt like something out of a romantic movie. But after our daughter, Emma, was born, something shifted. He started coming home later from work, always claiming he had meetings. At first, I believed him. I wanted to believe him. I told myself he was just trying to provide for us, that the long hours were temporary. But then I noticed the little things: the way he'd flinch when I touched his phone, how he suddenly started wearing cologne he never used before, and the faint lipstick stains that weren't mine. I remember one night in particular. He came home past midnight, smelling like whiskey and perfume. "Long day?" I asked, forcing a smile. He nodded, loosening his tie, avoiding my eyes. "Yeah, just business stuff. You know how it is." But I didn't know. Not anymore. Because the man standing in front of me wasn't the man I'd married. He was distant, distracted, and every time I reached for him, it felt like trying to hold on to smoke. I confided in Chloe, my best friend since college, the person I trusted more than anyone. She listened, hugged me, told me I was overthinking. "You've both been stressed," she said. "He adores you, you know that." I wanted to believe her. God, I wanted to. But something about the way she said it didn't sit right. The following week, Chloe started showing up at my house more often, sometimes when Mark wasn't even home. She'd bring wine, talk about her new job, ask casual questions about her marriage. I thought she was being supportive. Looking back, I see how blind I was. Then came the night of the company party. Mark invited me at the last minute, claiming a client insisted spouses attend. Chloe was there too. She worked in marketing for the same firm. She looked stunning, in a red dress that hugged her curves, and I caught Mark looking at her more than once. When I confronted him later, he brushed it off. "You're being paranoid," he said, laughing it away. But that laugh felt like a knife. After that, the distance between us turned into a canyon. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was happening right under my nose. So, I decided to test him. I told Mark I was going to visit my sister out of town for the weekend, but I never left. Instead, I parked near her house and watched. Friday night passed. Nothing. Saturday morning, his car was gone early, supposedly for golf. Saturday night, that's when it happened. I followed him into the city, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. He stopped at a hotel, the same one we'd stayed in for our anniversary 3 years before. My heart sank. I waited 15 minutes before going inside, telling the receptionist I was meeting my husband. And there it was, room 407. The elevator felt like a coffin, the walls closing in as my mind replayed every memory, every lie, every moment I ignored my instincts. When I reached the door, I heard laughter. Chloe's laugh. That soft, melodic giggle I'd know anywhere. My vision blurred. I opened the door quietly, just enough to see them, tangled in each other's arms, whispering, her head resting on his chest. My husband, my best friend, in the same bed where we'd once celebrated our love. I wanted to scream, to tear the room apart, but I couldn't move. The pain was so deep it felt like my soul was shattering. I left without a sound, numb, barely aware of how I got back to my car. I sat there for hours, replaying every lie, every look, every touch. The betrayal was complete from both sides. But what they didn't know was that this wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Because I had a plan, and it started with that ring I found the next morning. Left carelessly behind on her nightstand, I stared at that ring for what felt like hours, my mind flickering between rage and disbelief. It wasn't just a piece of gold anymore, it was a symbol of everything I had lost, everything they had taken from me. Every promise, every word, every night he'd held me while whispering he'd never hurt me, all of it had turned into poison. I picked up the ring, feeling the cool metal against my skin, and that's when something inside me changed. The heartbreak didn't vanish, it hardened. I realized I didn't want to cry anymore. I wanted them to feel what I felt. To know what it's like when your whole world collapses because of the people you trusted most. For the next few days, I played my part perfectly. I smiled when Mark came home, pretended nothing was wrong, acted like the clueless wife he thought I was. But behind that calm smile, I was gathering every piece of evidence, every text, every receipt. I knew he used a separate credit card, one I wasn't supposed to know about, the one he used for business expenses. I hacked into the account late at night while he slept beside me, his arm draped carelessly across my waist. My hands were shaking as I typed his password, our daughter's birthday. How poetic, I thought bitterly, that he'd used something so innocent to cover something so vile. What I found broke me all over again. Dozens of charges at restaurants I'd never been to, hotels I didn't recognize, expensive gifts I'd never received. And then there were the messages. Dozens of them. Can't stop thinking about last night. You're the only one who makes me feel alive. Next weekend. Same room. My best friend's name flashing at the top of the screen. Chloe. She'd signed off the last message with a heart emoji. I closed the laptop and sat in the dark, staring at him sleeping peacefully beside me. I wanted to scream, to throw the phone in his face. But I didn't. I realized something else that night. They both underestimated me. They saw me as fragile, naive, too trusting. That was their mistake. Because I wasn't going to confront him. I was going to destroy him, slowly, silently, and in a way he'd never see coming. The next morning, I called Chloe. "Hey, stranger," she said cheerfully. "Haven't heard from you in days." Her voice made my skin crawl. "Yeah," I said softly. "It's been crazy. Listen, I've been thinking about that marketing project you mentioned. The one for your firm's new client? Maybe I could help. I've been feeling restless lately." I could almost hear her grin through the phone. "Really? That would be amazing. I'll talk to my boss. We could totally use someone like you." I smiled, even though my jaw was tight. Perfect. Over the next few weeks, I inserted myself into their little world, their workplace, their social circles. I learned everything I could about their routine, who they talked to, where they met, what lies they told to cover their tracks. Mark didn't even question it. In fact, he seemed relieved that Chloe and I were getting close again. The irony almost made me laugh. One evening, the three of us went out for drinks after work. I watched them interact, the subtle glances, the nervous energy between them. It was almost thrilling, watching them try so hard to act innocent. "You two look tired," I teased, swirling my wine. "Rough week." Chloe laughed too quickly. "You have no idea." Mark smiled at her. That private smile I used to think was mine. I memorized that moment. I wanted to remember exactly how they looked before everything fell apart. Over the following days, I put my plan into motion. I started small. I left subtle clues that made them nervous. A faint perfume scent in his car that wasn't mine. A text from an unknown number saying, "I know what you did." Little things that chipped away at their confidence. It was fascinating to watch them unravel. Mark started coming home earlier, anxious, paranoid. Chloe stopped answering my calls, making excuses, saying she was busy with work. I knew fear was creeping in, but I wasn't finished. I wanted them to crumble publicly, to lose everything, their love, their reputations, their peace. One Friday evening, I invited Mark to dinner, pretending it was a surprise celebration for his promotion. I booked a private room at the same hotel where I'd caught them. He thought it was romantic. He even brought flowers. "What's all this for?" he asked, smiling as he kissed my cheek. "You'll see," I said sweetly. I'd also invited a few of his colleagues, including Chloe. She walked in wearing a black dress, looking radiant, but when she saw me sitting there with him, her smile faltered. "Oh," she stammered. I didn't realize that we'd all be here together. I finished for her. Don't worry, Chloe. The more, the merrier. She sat down, visibly uncomfortable. Mark looked confused but didn't say anything. When the waiter poured wine, I stood up and raised my glass. To new beginnings, I said, my voice steady. To honesty, to truth. I turned to the projector screen behind me, the one I'd asked the staff to prepare for my presentation. The room darkened, and the first image appeared, a screenshot of one of their text messages. Then another, and another. A photo of them in that hotel room. Gasps filled the room. Mark's face drained of color. Chloe covered her mouth, whispering, "Oh my God." I watched them, feeling oddly calm. "This," I said softly, "is what betrayal looks like." From the two people I trusted most. No one spoke. The silence was deafening. Mark tried to reach for me, but I stepped back. "Don't," I whispered. "You don't get to touch me. Not after this." He stammered, "It's not what it looks like." "Really?" I interrupted. "Because it looks like my husband and my best friend have been sleeping together for months." Chloe was crying now, her mascara streaking down her face. "Please let me explain." "Explain?" I laughed bitterly. "Explain how you lied to my face while holding my baby? How you called me your sister while sneaking around with my husband?" I turned to the stunned colleagues. "You all should know who you work with, who you trust." Then I walked out, leaving them both there, broken, exposed. But even as I drove away, part of me knew this wasn't the end. Because revenge has a strange way of leaving you empty. I'd exposed them, yes. But something still didn't add up. There was one piece missing. And when I found it, when I discovered the real reason behind their betrayal, it changed everything I thought I knew about my marriage. 2 days after the dinner, the silence in our house was unbearable. Mark had moved into the guest room. He tried to talk a few times, to explain, to justify, to cry, but every time he opened his mouth, I saw that hotel room again, that bed, that ring. I didn't yell. I didn't throw things. I didn't even tell him to leave. I just watched him unravel. He looked smaller now, like the weight of his lies was finally pressing him down. But despite all that, something inside me kept whispering, "It's not over." Because even though I'd destroyed their facade, even though everyone knew what they'd done, there was still something that didn't make sense. Chloe wasn't the kind of woman to risk everything. Not for Mark. She loved power, control, admiration, yes. But to destroy her closest friendship for him? No. There had to be more. That's when I remembered the envelope. Weeks before, I'd seen it once, a thick, cream-colored envelope with my name on it, buried under a pile of bills on Mark's desk. When I asked about it, he'd brushed me off. "Oh, just something from work. Wrong address." I didn't think about it again. Until now. That night, while he was asleep, I went into his office. The envelope wasn't there anymore, but I noticed something strange, a small safe tucked behind the bookshelf. I'd never seen it before. My pulse quickened. He always thought I was terrible with numbers, but he'd forgotten something. I remembered everything. Birthdays, codes, details. His old gym locker pin was 1119, our wedding date. I tried it. The lock clicked open. Inside was a single flash drive and a folder labeled Project C. I plugged the drive into my laptop. And what I saw made my stomach twist. Dozens of financial documents, transfers, and spreadsheets, all under Chloe's name, but connected to Mark's company account. Offshore payments. Untraceable bonuses. And there, an internal email chain with both their names, discussing moving funds before the audit. My hands trembled. They weren't just having an affair, they were stealing money from his firm. Together. And using my name as one of the false contractors. That was why she'd gotten me involved in that marketing project. They'd used my identity as cover. The realization hit me like ice water. Their affair had been a mask. A distraction. Maybe it started as lust, but it turned into something else, a scheme. I wasn't just betrayed emotionally. I was being framed. The next morning, I played dumb. I made coffee, smiled faintly, asked Mark about his work project. He looked at me cautiously, his eyes hollow. "It's over," he said quietly. "I told HR I'm taking leave." I nodded. "That's good. You need rest." He looked surprised, like he expected me to explode. But inside, I was already planning my next move. Later that day, while he was out meeting with his lawyer, I visited Chloe. Her apartment was chaos. Boxes everywhere, half-packed suitcases, the air thick with anxiety.
She froze when she saw me.
"What are you doing here?" she asked, her voice shaking. I smiled softly. "I came to help you pack." She swallowed hard. "Look, I didn't mean for any of this to happen." "Save it," I said, walking past her. "I know about the transfers, the fake accounts, the offshore payments." Her face went pale. How did you? "You should have been smarter," I interrupted. "You both should have known better than to use my name." She sat down on the couch, defeated. "It wasn't supposed to go that far," she whispered. "It started with him needing help. He said it was just temporary. Then the bonuses came and you both decided to keep taking." I finished. Tears welled in her eyes. "He said he'd leave you, that he'd protect me." I laughed bitterly. "He can't even protect himself." That's when she said something that stopped me cold. "You don't understand. He didn't plan to run away with me. He planned to run away with the money."
Alone.
"He told me last week he'd already moved half of it to a private account in your name. So when the audit hits, you're the one they'll come after." The room spun. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "You're lying." "Check for yourself," she said. "He's setting you up." I left without another word. I drove straight home, my hands trembling on the steering wheel. When I got there, Mark was in the living room, drinking. "We need to talk," I said, my voice calm but sharp enough to cut glass. He looked up, wary.
About what?
"The money. The fake accounts. The audit." His face drained of color. "You went through my things. You used my name," I snapped. "You made me your scapegoat." He stood up, voice rising. "You don't know what you're talking about. It was just paperwork." "Stop lying," I shouted. "You were going to let me take the fall, weren't you?" He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. I felt the air go still between us. "You stole from your own company," I whispered. "You lied, cheated, and now you are going to let me go down for it." He slammed his glass down, shards flying. "You think I wanted any of this? You were too busy being perfect, too good, too moral. I just wanted out. Out of the job, out of the life, out of us." His words hit harder than any blow. "You could have just left," I said softly. "You didn't have to destroy me." He laughed bitterly. "You'd never let me go. You'd make me pay for it one way or another. I just did it first." That's when I realized he wasn't the man I'd married at all. He never was. The charm, the warmth, the laughter, all of it had been part of the same act. I turned and walked toward the door. "You've made your bed, Mark. Now lie in it." He called after me, his voice trembling. "Where are you going?" "Somewhere you can't reach me," I said, without turning back. But as I left, a new idea formed. If he wanted to frame me, I'd beat him at his own game. I spent the next 48 hours building my case, screenshots, bank statements, voice recordings. Chloe helped, partly out of guilt, partly out of fear. We handed everything to Mark's company's legal team, anonymously. By Monday, the investigation exploded. Mark was suspended, Chloe's accounts frozen. The story spread like wildfire. But the final blow came when I received a letter from his firm's lawyer, a statement confirming I had been listed as a false contractor, but was cleared after the evidence showed who actually made the transfers. Mark lost everything, his job, his reputation, his savings.
I didn't feel joy, not really.
Just a cold satisfaction. But one thing still haunted me. Chloe disappeared. Her apartment was empty, her phone disconnected. It was as if she'd vanished overnight. A month later, I got a small package in the mail. No return address. Inside was a single item, that same gold ring. And a note, written in Chloe's handwriting. "He wasn't who you thought. But neither was I. Check the house." My hands shook as I read it. What did she mean? What was left to uncover? That night, I searched every inch of the house, but it wasn't until I reached the attic that I found it. An old box tucked behind a beam, labeled with my name. Inside were photographs, old letters, and documents, birth certificates, medical forms, and a file with my maiden name next to a signature I didn't recognize. And in that moment, I realized the biggest lie hadn't even been uncovered, yet I stood there in the attic, the dim yellow light flickering above me, holding that box like it was radioactive. Dust coated my hands, and my heartbeat echoed in the silence. Inside, everything looked ordinary at first. Old family photos, my childhood school records, even letters from my late mother. But then I saw it, a sealed manila folder, thicker than the rest, marked in neat black ink. Confidential, Margaret Langford. That was my maiden name. But I had never seen this folder before. I tore it open, my hands trembling. Inside were documents I couldn't make sense of, adoption papers, hospital records, and something that froze me completely, a DNA test dated only 2 years ago. My name was on it, so was Mark's. And the result line, no biological relation, sent my world spinning. At first, I thought it was about Emma, our daughter. I flipped through the pages, desperate to find context. But no, the test wasn't about her.
It was about me.
It showed that my birth certificate was falsified, that the parents I grew up with, the ones I'd loved and buried, weren't my biological parents at all. I felt my knees weaken. This couldn't be real. Why would Mark have this? How did he even get it? My mind started racing. Then another document caught my eye, a notarized letter signed by someone named Dr. Richard Langford. My father's name. But he died when I was 20. The letter was dated 3 months ago. To whom it may concern, it read, "If you are reading this, you have found what I could never tell you in life. Your husband came to see me before I passed. He knows everything about your birth, your adoption, and the debt that was never repaid." My hands started shaking so violently I had to sit down. My husband had met my father before he died. He knew I was adopted before I did.
Why? How?
I kept reading. When you were born, we owed money, a lot of money, to a man named Simon Cole. He agreed to make the debt disappear in exchange for something else, something we could never speak of. Your husband discovered this truth and promised to make things right. He said he'd protect you from what's coming. The words blurred. My mouth went dry. Protect me from what's coming. I whispered it aloud, like saying it might make it make sense. My mind replayed every strange behavior, every secretive look, every time Mark said he was doing it for us. Maybe he wasn't lying. Maybe all of this, the affair, the money, the secrecy, was connected to something deeper. I dug further into the box and found a flash drive taped to the bottom. I plugged it into my laptop right there in the attic. It contained only one video file, time-stamped 6 months ago. The image flickered, then focused. It was Mark, sitting in his office, his face pale, voice shaking. "If you're watching this," he said, "it means I failed. I tried to fix what your father started, but I got in too deep. Chloe helped me because she had connections with Cole's people. I thought if I paid them off, they'd leave us alone. But they wanted more. They wanted you. Your name, your record, your life. They said you weren't who you thought you were, that your real parents were part of something bigger, something dangerous. I didn't believe them until they showed me proof. That's why I did what I did. The money, the lies, it was all to buy time." He paused, breathing heavily. "I never wanted to hurt you. I love you, but if you stay, you're not safe. Trust no one, not even her." The video ended. I just sat there, staring at the frozen screen, feeling my world tilt. My father, debt, Simon Cole, Mark's affair, Chloe's disappearance. Everything was connected. But who was Cole?
And why did he want me?
I started digging. I searched the name online, but the results were vague. Offshore businesses, fake charities, a few old newspaper clippings about corporate scandals. Nothing concrete. Until one article caught my eye, a story from 15 years ago about a pharmaceutical front that went bankrupt under suspicious circumstances. The company name, Langford Biosolutions. My father's company. and listed as an investor, Simon Cole. The article mentioned missing research data, destroyed records, and an unconfirmed theory about illegal human trials. My stomach twisted. Was that why my birth was hidden? Was I part of something illegal? My phone buzzed suddenly, snapping me out of the spiral. A text from an unknown number. Stop looking. You're in danger. Meet me where it started. I froze. The message had no name, no number history. Just those words. Where it started. The only place that made sense was my parents' old house, the one we sold years ago after they died. I didn't even think. I grabbed my keys and drove. It was raining, the road slick, and my mind racing faster than the windshield wipers. When I arrived, the house was dark, boarded up, but the front door was slightly ajar. I stepped inside, flashlight in hand. Everything smelled of mildew and dust. Hello. I called out. No answer. The living room was empty except for a single envelope on the floor. I picked it up. It had my name scrawled in the same handwriting as the note that came with the ring. Chloe's. Inside was a photo, a black and white image of a hospital room. My mother, younger, holding a newborn. But the name tag on her wrist didn't say Langford. It said Patient C. Cole. My breath caught. My flashlight trembled in my grip. Was Chloe trying to tell me that I was related to Simon Cole? That he was my biological father?
My phone buzzed again.
Another message from the same number. Now you know. Leave it alone, or you'll end up like her. I turned slowly, and that's when I saw it. In the corner of the room, near the window, something glinted under the moonlight. A necklace. The same one Chloe always wore, a silver locket shaped like a tear. I walked closer, heart pounding. The locket was open, and inside was a small USB drive. I took it, pocketed it, and ran back to my car. I didn't stop until I was home. I plugged the drive into my laptop. A folder appeared. It contained video clips, hidden camera footage. Mark and Chloe in a dimly lit office, whispering. But it wasn't what I expected. We can't tell her, Chloe said, her voice shaking. If she finds out who she really is, she won't, Mark interrupted.
She can't.
Cole made that clear. If she knows the truth, they'll come for her. Chloe grabbed his arm. Mark, she deserves to know. He looked away. If she finds out, she's dead. The footage ended abruptly. I sat in silence, my pulse pounding in my ears. They weren't betraying me. They were protecting me, or trying to. All this time, I thought I was the victim of an affair, of lies, but maybe I was the target of something far darker. And if that was true, then Chloe didn't disappear because she ran. She disappeared because she was taken. And now they knew that I knew. My phone vibrated again, one last message flashing across the screen. It's too late. And then, everything went dark. When I opened my eyes, everything was white. A blinding, sterile kind of white that buzzed like electricity. My wrists were strapped to a bed, and four in my arm, and a monitor beeping steadily beside me. For a moment, I couldn't move, couldn't think. The last thing I remembered was that message. It's too late. Then darkness. A voice broke through the haze. She's awake. I turned my head, squinting. A man in a gray suit stood by the door, calm, expressionless. Where am I? I croaked. Safe, he said simply. For now. My throat tightened. Who are you? He gave a faint smile. A friend of your father's. My stomach turned. Simon Cole? He nodded once. You've been difficult to find. I pulled against the straps, panic flaring. Why are you doing this? What do you want from me? He studied me for a long moment before speaking. You've been told bits and pieces, half-truths, and lies. But the truth, Margaret, is that you were never supposed to exist. Your father created something extraordinary, something the world wasn't ready for. And you're the proof of it. My pulse spiked. What do you mean? He stepped closer, lowering his voice. You were part of an experimental genetic program. You were the only successful result. That's why your identity was hidden. That's why your husband and your friend tried to protect you. But you kept digging, and now others know. People who want to use you. He leaned in slightly. And now I need to decide whether to protect you or to make you disappear. Fear surged through me, but beneath it, something else sparked: anger. You won't control me, I hissed. He smiled faintly. You're stronger than I expected. He pressed a button on a small remote. The straps released with a soft click. You're free to go for now. But understand this: the people coming for you won't stop. They don't care about truth or justice. They only care about what's in your blood. I stumbled out of the bed, dizzy. Where's Mark? Where's Chloe?
Gone, he said.
He's in custody. She's presumed dead. But whether that's true, well, that depends on who finds her first.
My head spun.
None of it made sense. And yet, somehow it did. The lies, the fear, the money, all of it had been to keep this secret buried. Why tell me this? I asked. He looked at me, something almost like pity in his eyes. Because you deserve to know what you are. And what's that? The future, he whispered. Then he turned and walked out, the door clicking shut behind him. I was alone again. I ripped the 4 from my arm, stumbled to the window, and looked out, a sprawling compound in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by high fences and armed guards. My reflection in the glass didn't look like me anymore. My eyes seemed sharper, my face harder. I didn't know who I was, not really. But I knew one thing: I couldn't stay here. I had to find Chloe, to find answers, to understand what they'd done to me. I waited until nightfall. Then I ran. Through the corridors, past the gates, into the cold air. Alarms blared behind me, shouts echoing in the dark. But I didn't stop. I ran until my lungs burned, until the compound was a faint glow on the horizon. I didn't look back. I didn't need to. Because for the first time, I understood everything. The affair wasn't betrayal. It was a cover. The lies weren't cruelty. They were survival. And Mark, maybe he wasn't the villain after all. Maybe he was the only one who ever really tried to save me. Weeks passed. I changed my name, moved across the country, started a new life. But sometimes, at night, I'd hear footsteps outside my window, a shadow moving just beyond the light. And every time, I'd wonder, did I really escape, or am I still being watched? The last letter I ever received came 6 months later. No return address, just a single line written in Chloe's handwriting. They think you're gone. Stay that way. I burned it. I knew it was the only way to survive. But even now, I can't stop thinking about everything: the secrets, the blood, the truth that destroyed my life. And sometimes I look in the mirror and see something unfamiliar in my own reflection, something colder, sharper, almost inhuman. Maybe the man in the gray suit was right. Maybe I was never meant to exist. Maybe that's why they'll never stop looking for me. And if they find me, I don't know if I'll run again, or if I'll finally fight back. Because after everything I've lost, after every truth I've uncovered, there's one question I still can't answer. One that keeps me awake at night. What would you do if the person you loved the most was lying to save your life, or to control it?